Hello and welcome to the BGCP Disassembled Podcast, the official podcast for the Big Glasgow Comic Page, where we talk about the latest comics, movies, television, and other pieces of nerd culture. I am your solo host for this episode, Massimo Castelli, and on today's interview special, because we keep putting these out and people seem to love them, we're interviewing the New Zealand-born Scottish-based comic writer whose credits include the co-creator of Schism with Glaswegian artist Chris Conley and establishing Aroha Comics in 2019 and writing a hit girl story for Hit Girl Monday's ABCs for Millerworld Comics. And also here to talk about his newest Kickstarter, This Land Into the Deep, both issues which are now available for Kickstarting. A story that is based in the future or kind of alternate version of New Zealand that brings together the best elements of Disney's Moana, X-Men, and American Gods in a new together in a big melting pot. We are pleased to welcome to the show the marvellous Mark Abnett.
The marvellous Mark Abnett. Thank you very much. Never had a welcome like that before.
There we go. Could you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, Mark? Just to get who you are and what you do.
Yeah, you covered a lot of it. So I am a New Zealander living in the south of Scotland, down here in Dumfries. I've been here for coming on 10 years now. I'm a UK resident. And so you got a New Zealander and a young South African woman living in Scotland together and confusing the hell out of everyone.
I was going to say, the accent must be great.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's good fun. So back in 2000, well, what year is it now? See, last year doesn't count, so it's hard to really tell where we are time-wise relatively. Way back in 2016, Mr. Miller put a call out for people to enter in the Millerworld Annual to submit stories, and I did a blind submission for a Hit Girl story, and it got picked up and published, and I thought, hey, I'm writing comic books. But doesn't quite work like that. So it was nice to be published. It was a great experience, and then I realised I didn't know anything. So from that 4-page story, I started travelling all over the UK, and I went to as many conventions as I could, which had special trade days or the learning days. Glasgow Comic Con, for example, had a 9 panels day, which was the day before the con, which was a lot of guest speakers and stuff and people who wanted to get into comics. And I met a lot of Glaswegian and Scottish comic artists and writers there. And I tell you what, the one thing, if I was in New Zealand, this wouldn't have happened, right? So I was lucky enough. Mark originally thought I was Scottish. So that might be one of the reasons why my story was picked. And then he unfortunately found out I was a Kiwi living in Dumfries. So I'll take that one.
And this guy's...
Oh, absolutely. And then just being able to have access to so many great comic creators and independent comic creators and you say networking, having a beer and having a chat, and just generally such a good range of people. You know, you look at your like your Fraser Campbells and your Dave Cooks and your Big James. Oh God, Big James. Everyone knows Big James.
You're getting called out here. You can't remember his last names.
I told you I'm very low on sleep at the moment. Chasing bloody dogs around the backyard. James, he's gonna kill me. He's gonna murder me. But it basically took a step back, and I've been a comics fan all my life. Doesn't mean you know anything about how comics are actually created, produced, promoted, and marketed, and putting together a team and understanding the interactions between writers and artists and stuff like that. So it took me a couple of years, and I had an idea percolating in my head, and a lot of ideas percolating in my head, and we went about. I went about forming this story of basically a future New Zealand, which not many people would have a lot of. New Zealand in general, most people have a fair idea about New Zealand. Hobbit.
I was gonna say it's not got a lot of representation outside of big mountains and sheep and hobbits and Lord of the Rings.
So a couple of things happened. There was an earthquake, as there is every day in New Zealand, but there was a big one in the South Island and around the harbour of a tourist whale watching port called Kaikoura. Instead of things falling off into the sea and tumbling down, the sea shelf rose 5 meters, mooring all the boats in the harbour. And that's weird. You'd hardly ever hear of earthquakes bringing stuff up.
Unusual seismic activity, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then a news article came out that New Zealand had the lowest sea shelf in the world, and potentially there was the 8th forgotten continent around that area. And that area was called Zealandia, and named by the Maori people of New Zealand as Turuia Maui, which is the land of Maui. So it was interesting. I just started percolating ideas in my head, and I thought, well, what if this continent did rise up, and heaven forbid, maybe it was an ancient god pushing his handprint up, because this landmass which they've mapped out kind of looks like a handprint. And what if the people of New Zealand, this new continent, were given the power of the gods? And that's where the sort of X-Men meets Moana is probably the quickest elevator pitch to tell people who are not quite familiar with the area or anything. And it's utilizing a lot of and I won't call them, they're not called myths and legends in New Zealand for the Maori gods. It's history. So a lot of people can trace their lineage back to the ancient travelers who sailed across from the legendary island of Waiheke, which is, some people think it's Hawaii, but we're utilizing some of those legends and bringing them to life in a future place. And we've been doing the whole thing respectfully as well, as I've consulted with a lot of close friends back home and experts in translation, in art form, and a lot of the character designs have been done by New Zealanders.
That's one of the things I was going to ask you was, obviously it takes place like in a kind of future alternate version of New Zealand, and kind of being in New Zealand yourself, did the story kind of be informed by your own experiences and your kind of own friends and maybe other like family and stuff like that?
There are definitely, anyone who tells you that your characters and your stories aren't influenced by the people around you is lying, because there are definitely, and especially you'll see in issue 2, there's a couple of characters who have come out, and they are people who go, I know exactly, someone's going to tap me on the shoulder and I say, I know exactly who you're writing about there, mate. So I'm going to get called out by a few mates, which would be quite funny. But yeah, it's really interesting. So I had a friend come over, a Kiwi guy. He came over yesterday, and we socially distanced.
Of course, yes.
He was reading it out in a Kiwi accent for the first time, and I'm like, oh my god, he read it in the meter and how you would say it, and the tone was like, wow. He goes, yep, you've nailed that, brilliant. And that was quite reaffirming, because I have had people check back home on certain things. So I've got a guy who's done some of the design work, a guy who's done a lot of the tattoo designs, called Moko. So I've got a professional Maori traditional tattooist to design some of those facial tattoos. Some of them are not. I've had all these people involved, but to hear a mate read it out in a New Zealand accent, I was like, wow, that is.
You've nailed it. You've hit it right on the head. That's it.
So it'll be interesting to see how a lot of people take it as well. It was important to me to have some of Te Reo Maori, which is the Maori language. So how the guys at Diamond Steel Comics, they've done Saltire, and through Saltire there's some, I'm going to get this wrong, Gaelic or Celtic? It'll be
Celtic. Celtic or kind of Gaelic, that kind of something like that.
So they're bringing some of the old traditional language back, which is absolutely how it should be. And people around the world, wouldn't have a lot of experience outside the All Blacks and the Haka. That would be their only interaction with Maori culture. So much in the way an Asterix book would have Latin. Believe it or not, the pirates speak Latin in the start of it. In some X-Men comics, you had Dos Vidania, Tovarish, you had the Colossus and Kerouac, Nightcrawlers, sprinklings of German and stuff like that. We did that with this land as well. So one thing, we also have subtitles, obviously, for everything that needed subtitles. And in the opening page, we said, I'll read you exactly what it says. Here's issue 1.
There you go.
Within these pages, you will encounter a land that has embraced its past but has created something new. You may be unfamiliar with Te Reo, the Maori language, but if you'd like to enhance your enjoyment and learn the correct pronunciations, please use maoridictionary.co.nz. So you can type in the word that I've got there, and you can hear it.
That's what I was going to say is that when I was doing some obviously research and prep for this, I had to obviously use that website to try and get some of the pronunciations down for some of the question things. And for me personally, with a thick Scottish accent, it's some of the pronunciations aren't going to be exactly on point. But I think, and this is just something I think it's a very bold and kind of very forward thinking move to include this at the start of your book, because it means that people aren't going to feel left out or isolated just because it's not their culture. And I feel like, do you think that by having it on something like Kickstarter, like that kind of platform, that you've managed to appeal to the masses with the kind of the culture of the Maori and stuff like that, that might be something that a lot of people don't know about?
Yeah, I think, and it's not about hammering people over the head with it. You can choose to go deeper with it if you want, or on the surface you could just read it as is. Much in the way you got Tolkien, who invented the Elvish language for Lord of the Rings. You know it's Elvish, you can learn it if you want, and all these other interesting languages. Te Reo is a real language, and I think I felt a responsibility to kind of give back and help keep it alive and going. And there's been a real resurgence in the last 5 to 10 years in New Zealand about that. Whereas when I was growing up, the whole focus was on, you must learn Japanese and French because those are languages that are growing, and if you want to be into business and stuff. I mean, that was the 90s, and now if anything, you should be learning Mandarin and Spanish.
I feel like
Spanish, but
I feel like people have lost maybe touch with their own culture, and I feel like there's such a big thing in Scotland, about the whole thing about even Scotland and Ireland doing with Gaelic and Gaelic and stuff like that, and those languages.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a big learning for me was when I was sitting my UK citizenship test. I had you've got to do this life in the UK test, and it's this general knowledge questionnaire. You got to get multiple choice. 24 questions, you got to get 21 out of 24. And I was going around on my day job and showing customers this app on my phone. Not a single one passed it. And it got back to me. It's like, if I was to try the New Zealand one, I wouldn't pass that either. And why was that? It's like, even though we live in our own, wherever we live, we go about our day-to-day business, but it's important to actually recognise the culture of where we are and how it came to be. And current politics and weird stuff aside, Brexit and all that, it's important for each country, I believe, to understand their own their own identity. And language is a huge part of that, because some people can say, no, it doesn't mean anything. It's not going to add any value. How are you going to make money out of that? This isn't about making money.
It's about understanding heritage and culture.
Yeah, exactly. And because I came up with the idea for the story, it was important that I saw a future New Zealand, which was one that embraces Te Reo Maori as part of its normal language. So it was important that we kind of made it a little bit bilingual. Again, it's not, issue one's probably the heaviest with it, and that's because just to create the tone, the theme, of the environment. But it's not every second word.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to ask you, is the idea, was it this kind of, did it start off immediately knowing you were going to include the language in the book, or was it kind of a genesis over time that you realised, and when you thought about it, the fact that it was going to be in New Zealand, that you should include this language? Like it would be...
Yeah, what it was, it took a lot of world building, because I've got a folder on my, I've got 140 folders on my phone before I even started writing the script. It was about identifying the new geography, about, and through all this study over the last couple of years, I've been helping out with Russell McEwen at the Glasgow School of Arts, where I teach a session about, he does a intro to comic book art, and I come in and talk about how scripts created and a bit about world building and what sort of things are relevant, and storytelling and the story circle, which is big at the moment.
The whole
every story's the same, but mostly I'm there to talk a bit about world building and how a basic comic book structure works. So with the world building, it's before I even put pen to page, I talked about commerce, economy, clothing, what was the language like, New Zealand is about the same size as UK, but it has got a variety of different landscapes. Lord of the Rings pretty much shows that, again, going out there. you've got your golden beaches to dark sand beaches to almost desert-like mountain ranges and all sorts. So it's very diverse. So it's about thinking about these people in this new world. What are they like, and how would their position within the country affect their abilities and stuff like that? Auckland, so issue 1, for example, is based mostly around the North Island of New Zealand and Auckland, which is now called Axland. Auckland is on 100 dormant volcanoes. So if you had a continental shift, those volcanoes are going to go up. So there's going to be an impact there. So yeah, it was like, and our lead character Helena here, her and her people in Axland, they basically have the ability to manipulate steel and heat and fire. They can't wear normal clothes, so they have to cover themselves in volcanic clay. This leads to some of them have different designs and motifs on their body drawn in, and it's all very subtle stuff.
So
it's if someone's going to, I very much hope I can answer any question anyone has about the book, because I've done the groundwork doing the book.
Exactly, you've done the research.
Everything makes sense. You can't have I never say it correctly. Dasux Mechana.
Deus Ex Machina, the kind of the plot device that solves everything.
Yeah. All of us, you can't pull the answer out of the backside. Everything is placed and meant to be there for a reason, even if it's for a future story. Hopefully, I'll get a chance to speak to you again further down the line once another issue's dropped, because there's things that are in the book that I could probably explain to you and that people won't notice.
I was gonna say I have access to the. I believe you give access to the next few issues. But I would prefer to not talk about it just for the listeners, because obviously I've seen them without the colouring and stuff like that, just the inking and the dialogue and the stuff.
Yeah. So that's the great thing about. Yeah. So over those years that I was building towards this, I saved up a ton of money, because comics ain't cheap, and you're not in the comic. Trust me.
You're not into it money. Yep.
No one. And we've got all 5 issues are completely inked, which is fantastic.
That's something I was going to say is that obviously, because I didn't expect to receive all 5 issues when I got it, because a lot of time it is that thing of when I interview someone for Kickstarter, they maybe got 1 or 2, maybe 3 at a push. But the fact is, as you said, you've had this idea gestating for years and years and years, and the process of Kickstarter has managed to help you get it. How is that went about with the creative process as well? Like, you having to basically take these 141 photos that you have and then condense them down into 5 issues worth of content.
There is more stuff and backstory behind almost every single character in there than we'll ever see the page. But hopefully once all 5 issues are done and out there and eventually collected as a trade, depending on how well that's received as a whole, there's more stories to be told. This is a self-contained story. You're probably missing the one thing you haven't got is the last page.
Ooh, yep.
So I've left that out deliberately, so no one will see that last page till it's all done. So I've deliberately left that out.
Entirely fair.
There are opportunities for more stories to be told, but this is an introduction to the world and to basically these people have the powers of the god. An ancient god has returned, and he's not happy. And the first thing he does when he lands on crashes to the earth, and in the process of that, the heat he generates when he lands into this beach consumes in glass and sand. Heat plus sand equals glass.
Ah, shit.
So it consumes a family around a campfire and traps Helena's family. And the first words out of this god's mouth is, "Bring me Maui." And I use Maui because main reason probably because Moana and a lot more people
know who he is. Yep.
Yeah, basically the Polynesian god of mischief and many other things, and that is from that point a whole lot of decisions are made to where Helena decides that she must help him and recruits. And here's the cover to issue 2. If you're watching and not listening, which is if you go to this land in the Kickstarter, you can see it. You're frozen, by the way. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you. I can still hear you. Yeah. Technology is always great.
Yeah. So, issue 2 is about this group of mercenaries that she's gathered, and we kick off into high gear, and they venture off into the deep, so to speak, as the title is called. Introduce more of the world of Te Reo Maui.
So this is the thing that I was going to ask, is obviously kind of the main character of the first kind of few issues, or the whole series itself, is Helena, and is imbued with abilities from her ancestral bloodline. Like kind of many other characters in the book, was there a particular choice for her to be descended from Rumikoko, the god of volcanoes?
Well, a lot of that was because of Auckland being the 100 volcanoes. Mm-hmm. It was a no-brainer. Now, whether or not she is descended or not, I think that's not quite accurate, but that's what the people there believe they're imbued with that power. There's some tricky stuff in issue 1. For some reason, she's the only one who can understand Tane.
Yeah. The
reason for that is revealed. Oh, actually, in issue 1, which will probably, those who haven't read issue 1 yet, we'll probably leave that. So, yeah, so there's a reason that Tane was drawn to her and for her to help him find Maui, basically. And that is revealed a bit further down the line.
Of course. But
it's hard to remember because the stories are done for all. It's very hard to...
What comes in, what comes in what order, yeah. So does that, like, because obviously, like, because issue 2, because we're going to talk about that a little bit, as well as the idea that a lot of these characters as well are also have bloodline traits or ancestral traits or whatever you'd like to call them. Was there a particular decision behind each character having like these individual things, or like these kind
of... A lot of it would, when you see, oh, you're back, you're moving again, I can see it.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
You know, sometimes you have the angry guy, the quiet guy, the mysterious guy. You know, when you're putting the band together, putting the together sort of issue. That's sort of what the back half of issue 1's like. There were some people I wanted to be in there for people I know. There are some, as I did a bit of design work over Inktober over the last couple of years, and Inktober is actually a great thing to focus you for a day and get some stuff out there. Some of these designs have been refined by other New Zealand artists and stuff, which is great, because I am by no means look, I can pick up a pen and paper and do a few squiggles, but no means a top artist or anything. But a lot of the design, so the series artist, PR de Dillis, is actually Polish. And main reason for that is a couple of reasons. PR is a professional comic book artist. He has a track record of delivering. When you're a first-time comic book creator, writer, and the only thing is got you credit behind you is a 4-page Buddy Hickhill story, you get a little bit of credit for that, but you still have to build the trust of other creators. I did have a good search for New Zealand artists, but I couldn't find... New Zealand comic book scene is not big at all. It's more very indie alternative art, and I really wanted to have a strong sense of a manga stylish look.
That's what I could say is the art is stunning. I really am a massive fan of the art, and I think it's something very charming and endearing about the characters because they're very expressive. And obviously, I mean, you kind of answered it as well, as that like when you kind of decide to pick the artist to draw appear, and what was did it come to the idea of like you knew for the fact that when you saw his art, that's the man who I want to be, or that's the person I would want to be doing my story. That's the one who I feel like can best represent my character stylistically and also the world that I'm building. Yeah.
So originally, what the idea was after I did the Hickhill story, I was going to do an anthology, and that was only going to be maybe 30 or 40 pages made of lots of 4-page short stories, and I commissioned PR to do 4 pages, and I saw that, and I was like, no, we got to keep going with this and keep doing something here. There is a world beyond this land, and Schism is actually set in the same universe, which I wrote Schism with Chris Conley. And issue 2 of that, hopefully, between Chris having a wing and all sorts of stuff, we're hoping to push that out on Kickstarter, maybe October, launching at Thought Bubble, which should be good. And that's going to be a 60-page issue, which is kind of Schism. A side note is basically Schism 1 sort of Memento meets Battle Angel Alita.
Oh.
And issue 2 is pretty much Battle not it's all stylish Spanish Spanish fighting in the snow.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't had time to really wrap that in my head what it is, but it's going to be
It sounds great regardless. Sounds
big
great.
old violent comic. But it's all happens in the same world because it's in issue 1 and the first 4 pages you see that the world has changed due to resources in the world, doom and gloom, global warming. They were sending shuttles off Earth to find a new world. And the last one was sabotaged and exploded the moon, which altered the polarity of the Earth, which meant earthquakes and weather changes and catastrophe.
Just a general bad time for everyone involved.
Fun. So it's snowing in Spain non-stop. New Zealand is a new continent, and the people are powered up. There are a couple of other stories that I've got in my pocket for a couple of other places. Effectively, the west coast of Australia is gone. East coast of Australia, because New Zealand.
Yeah, there you go.
Sorry, Sydney. And I've had a lot of great Australian support, believe it or not. So
I would say that, like, yeah, we destroyed like the one of the bigger cities, but we like your book. It's fine. We like you. You're a big fan of it. No, that's like an interesting thing of and I mentioned this in my interview with Fraser Campbell for Alex Automatic. A lot of your stuff is going away from traditional superhero kind of ideas. Like, of course, there's elements of this land that have people powers and stuff like that, but
power abilities and fun uses.
It's not capes and tights and flights. It's none of that stuff.
No.
Is there any reason for that particularly, or was it just one of those things of like it's not something that you feel like you?
I would love to. Look, I'm a huge X-Men fan. I'd love to write an X-Men book. I don't think, and if you, I don't know if you're familiar with the current X-Men run. It's actually not about capes and types. The clothes they wear are more representative of them rather than superhero costumes. Oh. And this is similar to what I'm doing here. How they dress and how they prepare themselves for battle or whatnot is more reflective of them and utility and suitability rather than look at me, I'm a symbol representing hope or whatever.
Truth, justice, and the American way.
I don't know if it's the American way anymore. They keep changing that, but that's a whole other.
It's a whole other can of worms.
And I think, superhero comics are being done very well by other people. Between all the stuff coming up from Marvel TV and stuff like that, and Invincible, is probably as far as I'm concerned, Invincible is a perfect superhero comic. And the TV series was great, and that will continue to be great because it's being produced and created by Skybound.
Robert Kirkman, Skybound,
Yeah, and Ryan Otley and Corey Walker they're all in. They're all apparently. I think from what I heard, all the scripts are done for the next couple of seasons anyway.
Yeah, I was gonna say because they renewed it on the bounce like for season 2 and season 3, and I feel like the best thing about now, and this is something that you've seen maybe in the past, probably 10 or so years. Is the fact that alternative takes on superheroes and powers are getting a lot more kind of like visibility, more kind of modern kind of popular kind of culture and stuff like that, and it's
absolutely,
and it's allowing books like yourselves, This Land, to kind of exist in a space where people really want to see alternative takes that aren't necessarily superhero based, but superhero adjacent in a sense. So people with powers and abilities, but not necessarily, as I said before, capes and tights. And with that, do you think that comes with the fact that like it's more than just about the story that you're producing, but also about like, do you feel like you could have done this Kickstarter 10 years ago and it would have got the same, or like 5-6 years ago, or do you feel like now's the perfect time for you to release this?
Well, I couldn't afford to do it 10 years ago. And Kickstarter's in a place where, especially with the COVID, people have leaned a lot on retro and memorabilia and things that were near and dear to them growing up. You've seen a resurgence of things like Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z. You've seen, we're getting a He-Man. Some photos came out for Kevin Smith's He-Man animated series today. They were awesome. That's from my generation, grew up in the 80s, so all over that. And on the other hand, I love the She-Ra one that came out last couple of years. Completely different take, but definitely in that sort of mold and really, really well done. I think, and especially with this land, almost one thing about the year that Hit Girl came out, I was on holiday in Australia at my brother's wedding, and I was in Singapore for a bit, and I went to every single comic shop, and I said, "What's big at the moment?" And they said, "Kid stuff and manga." And whilst this is can be, I think this is ages 8 and up.
Yep.
I think there's stuff for older readers, and you can get more out of it. And but at the same time, there's a simplicity to the story, as such as the kids can get into it as well. And I really think this is something that could be an evergreen project that could sit on a bookshelf in a New Zealand library for years.
Yeah.
And much in the way as like Saltire has done with they've done their thing for Scottish comics and on Scottish schools. That is, the guys have done really well getting that into John. Has done really well getting that into all the libraries across Scotland, all the school libraries and stuff. And I think we've got an opportunity to do that here. But at the same time, Kickstarter offers a global reach. So I've just got as many backers from the USA as I do from the UK and Australia and New Zealand. So it's really exciting.
Is that your hopes then for the kind of the book? Not to take off and like be this like uber like powerful franchise kind of thing, but kind of be something that is looked back on positively.
I guess I would love that. I guess that is your goal. You're not going to succeed, and I think that's why I didn't launch issue 1 till all 5 issues were drawn. Right, so I knew I had the whole story completed. As such, it's just colouring and lettering. So each Kickstarter is to pay for the colours and letters for the following story. At this point, we have issue 1's complete. Issue 2 just going through the final lettering pass now, and issue 3. So issue 3 is not coloured yet, but the first 5 pages of 3, 4, 5 are coloured, and the covers from. So that's issue 2 cover. If anyone can see that, I don't know. That's issue 3 cover. That's issue 4 cover, coloured. And that's issue 5 cover, coloured. This is sort of thing that's done in mainstream publishing when they do when they get out their pre-orders and stuff.
Yeah.
To get all the front 5 pages and the cover coloured and out there, even though the rest of the story might not be finished. And yeah, I just thought it would be a good way and a good sign to show the backers that we're rolling on all cylinders. Yeah. This thing is going.
I totally agree, and I feel like it shows like a massive commitment and even kind of like a set of almost like a gall, if you know what I mean, like a big set of like cojones to kind of without using like derogatory like anything like that, like the idea of like you having this thing of like I'm gonna write these 5 issues and I'm going to get them to a point that I can do by myself or like with the help of my own financial needs, and then I'm going to offer the backers this thing because I want them to know that I'm serious about this project.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, you go.
No, you go.
But what's exciting as well is once we've got all that artwork together, we're looking at what add-ons and what extras can we create for this. So I've got some really great pin-ups from New Zealand artists that people have never heard of before. I was lucky enough. One of my Verona Putarunui is a friend from university who she was a consultant, not quite an editor, but a consultant, and she was really good at guiding me to I am at the end of the day I am a white or Pakeha New Zealander. I don't have any Maori blood in me. So she helped me identify areas that might have been tricky or might have been tapu or sacred to people. Mm-hmm. Someone else got in touch with me and said, does anyone know anything about Maori history and whatnot? And this was Zach Howard, who was the artist for Hellboy and Venom. And he's recently just finished on a Hellboy book. And I got Verona in touch with him, and as a favour, he did this fabulous pin-up for me for the book. So it's been like calling in favors from all over the world. I don't know if you can quite see.
Yeah, because it looks stunning. I was gonna say like the idea of like you having to treat something with a very sensitive like light. You have to be very particular when you're going through it because you obviously you're even though sometimes people can have the best intentions when they're writing something, it can go terribly wrong without the assistance of guidance.
Yeah, and unfortunately, at the end of the day, someone may find fault with it, but I have done everything in my limited ability to make sure everything's as sense checked and as far as possible. And even as far as such as in issue 1, we're not actually using the physical gods; we're using aspects of these gods. So that was important to me, just in case people saw that this god wouldn't do that, and that what Ane is a tulpa, and a tulpa is something that the Tibetans talk about, which is an essence of yourself, not yourself, but an essence or something that
an aspect of yourself. Yeah,
an aspect. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So I wouldn't say it would be cheap of me to say that there's an out there, an out for me, like, well, a get out clause or something like that. But it was done as in the most respectful way possible, so as not to offend. Plus, I think but it does add a greater aspect to the story and makes the scope of scale of what is out there even more impressive.
I mean, even in that first issue where the guy obviously crashes to Earth, who I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his name because I will butcher it. It will entirely Tane.
People have said Tane, and I'm like,
Tane. Yeah. He even mentions the fact you're like an infinite, one of these infinite worlds on this infinite place, this infinite cosmos, and it's the idea of like
Jonathan Hickman there.
Yeah, you're seeding some ideas for future projects, your own wee multiverse. And, that's what I took it as personally. I'm like, okay, I can see where this is going, where this is how it's going to work out. But
so yeah, it's something that this world of the world of this land is essentially a what if. And it doesn't impact negatively the real world and tradition and histories of the Maori culture. But it offers up an insight and an opportunity for more people to learn and explore it. That was my takeaway. That was never the initial goal, but as the story came together, I felt responsible to do it right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree, and I feel like the care that is taken with the first 2 issues, because that's what's available to the public, and the subsequent issues, which I've read a little bit of, but I don't want to spoil myself too much with, is it's a genuine care. It's not, you're not doing it just so like to have an out. You know what I mean? Like saying, "Oh, I've done all this stuff." You feel like you've taken genuine time to consider as you said, the ramifications of culture and how people perceive the culture.
And there was a long conversation about, well, why don't we just change all the names and make it something different and whatnot? And it's like, you know what? It could have been. I could have done that and just made it another place and another thing. But there's so much more value to it having these aspects. When I say value, not commercial value.
No,
I mean mana, and more like mana and respect, and really elevates the book to something else by having these things there. One really interesting coincidence was so New Zealand is made up of 3 islands currently: the North Island, the South Island, and Stewart Island down the bottom. The history of New Zealand is the South Island is the canoe where Maui and his brothers rowed out and they went fishing, and the North Island is actually shaped like a stingray if you look at it.
Yeah.
And this is Maori history, not legend. That Maui and his brothers, Maui threw out his jawbone and pulled up this giant fish from the sea, which is shaped like a stingray. Now, Taurua Maui, this geographical mass around it, which could come into being, is kind of shaped, I saw similar to a handprint. But what I thought of it was interesting at the time. I was trying to think of a name of this event that changed everyone. We called it the fever. And what it looks like is a fever is also another name, as a murder is another name for a group of magpies. A fever is a name for a group of stingrays. So this new land looks like it's got all these stingray tails coming at it. And it's like, oh my God.
Look at that.
Crazy coincidence.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it right. As I say, like, you hit it right on the money. Even with something that's completely almost accidental in a sense, you managed to kind of solidify it as part of its own part of mythology inside of the culture. It's great.
And there are a lot more things like that just lined up, and I'm like, well, this is obviously karma or whatever, but I've got to keep doing it.
It's incredible because like there's little things. It's little things that make the book it's fantastic. It's great. It's like I'm be honest, I'm a bit picky when it comes to my comics.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I like
there's a lot of great content out there.
Exactly. I like what I like, and when you have the Kickstarter, you're obviously putting money towards a project, and I always, you know, having through this opportunity of being able to interview people, even before this interview, I've already backed the Kickstarter because I've seen so far something that is so different from anything else out there and addresses a culture that is obviously not kind of similar to kind of Gaelic or Gaelic kind of, you know, kind of Scottish culture, but in that sense of it is a culture that is not well known. But yeah, it feels like one of those things if you're trying to shed light onto said culture, and it's a very admirable effort, I believe.
Yeah, and I think it's been just bloody rewarding.
Yeah,
and it's kind of backtracking a touch. One thing I forgot to say before, one thing about getting all 5 issues done is one of the rewards I've done is like an adult colouring book, which is, you know, I think that fad was about 5 years old. But what it does is there's images from all 5 issues in there that don't really spoil it, but tease, oh my God, I need to see more of this.
Exactly.
And we've managed to get full page and double page spreads enough to make 2 books, two colouring books. And they were a huge success last time, and we're doing one more issue of that for this campaign as well. We've even managed to PR the series artist is doing personal sketches, A5 colour and pen, and that bundle is only £65, which is like freaking bargain to have, you know, personalised sketch and stuff. And he'll do anything. You know, it's a kind of a half torso headshot, but he'll do any character you want within reason. I don't want to do any mechs. But it's everything about the campaign's been fantastic. And one thing, as I said, issue 1 was out in February. It was fulfilled within the 6 or 7 weeks. I got the timeline wrong because I didn't realize it took Kickstarter 2 weeks to send the money out. So I was like, yeah, well, the book's ready to go, but I kind of had to wait for Kickstarter to pay before I started paying for the postage. So postage is probably the biggest burden on comic days. But it's all within reason. We're very lucky actually in the UK that the Royal Mail's not actually that bad compared to other countries. The US creators, man, some of their postage.
I was looking at some stuff that I got linked through, and it was like $20 postage. It was like $20 to back the Kickstarter and $20 postage to get it to the UK.
It's nuts. So it was interesting to see. And the other thing I didn't count on was the first campaign being so successful. Because I thought I'd only need 100 copies, and said, "Oh no, I actually need about I think it was about 160 physical copies." So that print run went from 100 to 200. I was like, "Oh!" So even though the first campaign was successful, we ended up ducking it and like, "Oh yeah." But Kickstarter is an amazing way to build an audience and get the word out there as well. So it's almost a pre-order system. What a lot of my first-time Kickstarter friends and family and other people who jumped on board, they didn't realize was some people were scared away because Kickstarter now has this disclaimer. As soon as you back it, it says, there is no guarantee. There's a big yellow box that pops up now. And it's like, all right, okay, that's interesting. But it's done. You know what I'm saying? They're like the books.
Yeah, exactly. You know for a fact there is a guarantee because you've done it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's exciting it's been really rewarding and exciting to get out there. And also I should apart from PR's fantastic work, Lizel Buenaventura, the colorist, is just
man. Yeah, it's great.
He's kind of done this it's not the coloring is bright and bold, and as the story goes on, there's some really cool stuff that you've seen. That once it's coloured, yeah, I've seen some of the stuff, and it's like, holy crap, she's just absolutely killed it. So it's very exciting to see the next couple of issues, some of the stuff she's going to put out. But Liesl is, and I must apologise to her, but she's done work for Zenoscope, Scout Comics, Alterna, and she's also a published writer now with Scout Comics.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's absolutely fantastic. And then on letters, we've got Hassan Otsmani Alao, who Hassan's everywhere at the moment. You know, he does the great panel by panel monthly, I would call it a review / thesis on independent comics, basically. That comes out every month. He does Strip Panel Naked, which is a YouTube channel which digests and breaks down comic art and stuff. He's a clever guy, and he's a fantastic letterer as well. Like I think he's just done Declan Shelby's book that was just released last month. So everyone on the team is an absolute pro. I would have liked to try and get more, as I said, more New Zealanders in the mix of the finished book, but all the best New Zealand artists work with Peter Jackson. So can't compete with that Hobbit money. So
exactly that Lord of the Rings money, that Hobbit money.
Yeah. So ultimately, it's aside from myself, there's me, and then there's everyone else. So hopefully together we've brought together it wouldn't be out of place, I think, with an image mark on it or something like that.
I definitely agree with you.
Yeah. But I will say this: I've never pitched it to any publisher or anything like that.
Well, that's what I was gonna say is that you have your own comic publisher at the moment, or our own kind of comics company, which is how do you pronounce that? Is it the name?
Aroha.
Aroha Comics.
And that was the thing. I mean, that's important to me as well. Essentially, that's my hand with a koru symbol swirl in it. And I didn't want to call it Miller World or Mark World or, Abnett verse or something like that. And I thought it's important because Aroha reflects love and kindness and caring in New Zealand. And it's just putting a bit of me and putting a bit more of my background out there.
Do you? I was going to say, do you hope that with your own comics company that you're going to give other kind of creators a chance in the future? Because obviously it's a part of yourself. Do you think that that's what it would be like?
There's absolute potential there. The only issue will always probably be cash flow.
Yeah.
But I would never. I think you've seen a lot of books. Unless you're a real big name, and this is another reason with Kickstarter, I made sure the book is completed before we put it out there. The key thing is you've got to earn some trust. This is only my second Kickstarter. I could be hit by a car tomorrow. Something like that could happen. But there's enough in place where someone else can pick it up and push it over the line and get the story finished. We've made the right sense checks for that sort of thing. If someone does have the right story, and I would happily publish anyone else. So this world that I've created, we've got different. I've tried to make sure we've got different. I don't want to get into finances. We've got different agreements with different artists and whatnot. So that's how do I say this? It's a tricky business being your own.
It's complicated. Yeah, that's the thing of it.
But I don't think it's necessary. I'd be happy to help and assist people run their own Kickstarters and stuff like that. But there's no reason why people shouldn't be in charge of their own destiny now. Between webtoons and Kickstarters and all those sort of things out there, I think it's better for everyone to be in control of their own worlds and properties. I'm always happy to offer advice. Yeah, it's usually hard to get me to shut up. But it is very. I think moving forward, you want to have your own. You want to see your own vision fulfilled, and I don't think I would. If there's a great story and I really want to be part of it, I'd absolutely put my hand up and try and help in some way. But I would never want to take ownership.
Yeah, you want to give the creative liberty to the person.
I would rather help and guide, and I don't. Yeah, it's 3 comics in between Schism and This Land, and the Aroha Comics logo is representative of me and not anyone else at the moment. So it would be wrong for me to slap that on someone else's creation.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I was
all around that one, didn't I?
There you go. Well, I feel like, unfortunately, I've run out of questions to ask you. And I've rattled through all the main points that I feel like we should cover about your book. But before we wrap this up, is there anything else that you're working on at the moment that you'd like to plug or cover for us?
Right. Well, what date is this coming up?
It will become out. Today's obviously the 13th. Probably kind of the 20th, maybe the 21st, that kind of time.
Right. So the Kickstarter's finished. So, there's no reason why you can go to arohacomics.com and pick up issue 1 and 2 if you want to read it. And there'll be a link in the description, I hope.
Yes, there will be.
A for Alpha, R for Romeo, O for Omega, H for Hotel, A for Alpha, arohacomics.com. And there'll be a link through the store there so you can pick up This Land issue 1 and 2. But issue 3, so it was interesting with this because the first Kickstarter was February. I did the second Kickstarter as being funded, and we did it over 3 weeks rather than the traditional 4 because I was really keen on getting it out there. And that's the dogs going in the background. So one thing that did confuse some people because the title on Kickstarter says This Land 1 and 2.
2, yeah.
Next Kickstarter will say This Land 1 and 2
and 3.
Main reason is it helps people know they can jump on board.
That's what I can say is that you have the option to, as an add-on for the Kickstarter, to get a copy of the first issue as well.
And there will be, and definitely issue once we're ready to do 3, there will be tiers there for that will have all 3 as well. The other thing we're probably going to wait a bit longer because the 1 and 2 have kind of blurred together for some people. Even though it's been fulfilled and we moved on to the next one so quickly, it was advised to me that I actually wait a bit longer to give people a breathing space rather than, which is weird because I, as a consumer person, would want to get the next one.
Exactly, I want to get the one, yeah.
But it's a whole thing about how it feels to some people like I've been banging on about this since February. And, noise can be lost in the void sometimes.
Yeah.
So we're not going to wait 6 months, but we will wait more than maybe 4 weeks between.
There you go. Yeah. Give people some time to digest the plot of the first 2 issues.
Absolutely.
Go keep them on tenterhooks.
Yeah, and otherwise there's Schism, which is available with Closed Region artist Chris Connolly, and that will be coming to a Kickstarter hopefully in October. Chris is going great guns, so it can be read by itself. Schism is Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, but all books can be read by themselves. And that's going to be an oversized, I think we're up to 54 pages on that. Chris keeps adding pages, so which is great. So, yeah, because that's taken a while. So that first issue 1 that came out in 2019. So we're letting Chris take his time on that one and get it to when it's ready, and hopefully it'll be distributed and available at Thought Bubble. So yeah, fingers crossed. Last year we were supposed to go to Thought Bubble for the first time. We're definitely there this year. Touch wood.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, who knows what's happened with the greater scheme of things. I'm still waiting for my vaccinations before we look at committee to anything closer.
So yeah,
it's hard for everyone.
It's a hard spot. I've had my first vaccine, but I haven't had my second jab yet, which is what I was
I'm not happy with the Dumfries NHS. I'm 42. Jeez.
Well, I was going to say, I cannot wait to see what you got coming out in the future, and I probably will most likely back every single coming issue of This Land. But that is all we have time for today on the BGCP Disable podcast. Thank you for joining us, Mark. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. You can find Mark's Kickstarter for issue 2 of This Land at https://kickstarter.com/project/Mark Abnett/thisland2 into the deep/description, I believe.
Just
or
Google
just
This Land Kickstarter.
Just This Land Kickstarter will also do as well. You can find us on Facebook at BGCP Comic Con and BGCP Disassembled Podcast. We've also got a Twitter as with the handle at BGCP Comic Con. You can find the latest news, reviews, interviews, and Toy Mart dates, because we're starting to open up stuff and starting to have more physical events as lockdown eases, at the Big Glasgow Comic Page website. Do you have any social medias that you would like to plug, Mark, before we go?
I've doubled down on so Facebook, Aroha Comics, Twitter, Aroha Comics, Instagram, Aroha Comics, or also on Twitter at Mark Abnett, which is my nutty views and stuff, and I try and keep it just to comics on the on the Twitter. So yeah, I wouldn't say I'm not out there. I'm not a complete nutcase. Bit crazy. And I got lots of, and I do on the side do a lot of custom action figures and stuff. The COVID era has I've developed a new hobby of customizing Marvel Legends action figures. So,
oh wow! Well, I mean,
behind me, 5 Daltops and 300 figures, and 100 of them are my customs. So all X-Men.
Well, that's incredible. You know what? Maybe I might have to contact you at some point for a custom figure. But no. So thank you for listening, everybody. And we will see you on the next page.
Thank you for listening to Disassembled. You can find more news and reviews on BigGlasgowComicPage.com. And don't forget, you can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube as BGCP Comic Con. Make sure you also subscribe on your podcast provider of choice for new episodes every week.